Hello and welcome to my all sites tier list for patch 0.14. Here we have all of the sites bought and purchased, looking really nice and good. By my count, there are 83 sites in the game. We're going to go over all of them, so let's talk about the 4 things that I am looking for. First thing is the general appearance of the site, so the housing and the reticle. 2, how much the reticle travels up or down during tap fire, because that can create an inconsistency where your bullets are not going to the same place as where your reticle is. 3, the floatiness of the site, because that can make it slow to get on target. Floatiness can create a general sense of a lack of confidence in your sight and your aim. And 4, I am looking for scope shadow. So with the assault scopes and the optics, when you lean, you can sometimes see a shadow on your scope that's blocking your vision. This affects some scopes more than others, so that will be one of the things that I am considering. For testing the sights, we have a poorly built weapon with very low ergonomics and high recoil. This is to exaggerate or discover negative aspects of the sights that you normally wouldn't experience in a proper build. And then we have a well-built weapon with high ergonomics and low recoil to see how detrimental these negative aspects of the sights really are. And for the sights that are dove mounts, we have these 2 weapons, which one is poorly built, one is very well built, and it is to test the dove mounted sights. With all that said, let's go ahead and get into it, starting with compact collimators. There are only really 2 in this category worth considering, and that is the Delta Point and the Fastfire 3. I think the Delta Point is the best in this category. It is a triangle where you shoot in the center. Whether you're shooting close or far, you want to be aiming at the center of the triangle. Some people really don't like the shape of the reticle, so the Fastfire 3 is the next best option. It is a blurry red dot. This is what it looks like in game. This is what it should look like. It should have a dot more similar to the RMR, but instead it is blurry. I don't know why they can't fix this, but it has been like this forever, and it'll probably stay this way forever. As far as a budget option, the PK06 is the best. It is very inexpensive, and it is actually pretty good. A lot of people hate it because it used to be the best in the game, and it got pretty heavily nerfed, but overall it's still pretty decent and a great budget option. The T1, H2, and Romeo 4 are all bad to me because of the housing. I don't like the large housing. However, the T1 feels the best, the H2 has a larger dot which I don't like, and the Romeo 4 feels the worst because it's a little bit floaty. The RMR and the Acro P1, however, are completely unusable because of how floaty they are. People often joke in Tarkov that you play Tetris. Well, if you have one of these sights, you can also play Pong. Kind of funny with the Acro P1, it looks like the dot kind of goes onto the metal part of the inner housing, so that's kind of interesting. Lastly, the P90 ring scope. This is the default scope that shows up on the P90. I don't think anyone has ever used it other than maybe shooting a scav while extracting. Just rip this off the P90 and put something better on. I would not use this ring sight at all. So to sum up compact collimators, the Delta Point and the Fastfire 3 are the best in this category, with the PK06 being a really good budget option. Collimators, or reflex sights if you prefer. The EOTech XPS 3-0 has been the best in this category for a very long time, and I think it still is the best. However, now it has a couple of friends in the form of the Elcan Spectre HCO and the Vortex Razor UH1. All 3 of these are great, and I would recommend all of them. The Cobra EKP-8 is still a budget hero, coming in the form of a rail mount with the 18 and a dove mount with the O2. Not only is it budget friendly, but it is actually good. The EOTech 553 and EXPS3 are both higher mounted, so they have a little bit more floatiness to them, but both of them are still very good. And because they're higher mounted, you can clear the default post on the M4 with both of these. The Boss XE. This is a new addition for this wipe. It has very crisp, clean reticles. However, some reticles are tied to lasers or infrared lasers, so if you have a favorite that has a laser on, be careful at nighttime raids because you might be giving yourself away without knowing it. Also, the lasers of the Boss XE do not give you the point fire buff, so it's cool, but kind of pointless. Overall, I think it is slightly floaty, but very crisp and clean in terms of the reticle. OKP7DT. This is a nice sight with a clean reticle. In stressful situations, it can kind of blur into one big blue bar. So try and maintain understanding of where the center is. So if you're in a stressful situation, you will know where your bullets are going. The EOTech XPS3-2. This is similar to the other EOTech, except it has 2 dots, and I can't stand it. The fact that it has 2 dots for me is very confusing, and I don't like it at all. Maybe it's not a problem for you, but it's a problem for me, and I just don't like it. KPSR2. This is a nice, cheap, inexpensive little sight that only goes on the Varesk or the SR2M. It's nice, it's cheap. If I use that SMG often, I will use this sight. It's pretty decent. MRS. I want to like this sight more because it's very clean in terms of housing and reticle. However, it is a bit floaty. This used to be my favorite sight for night vision when the other sights were broken. However, they have fixed it, so now we have more options for night vision. Overall, I'm still fond of this thing. If it was less floaty, I would like it more and I would rank it more highly. The SRS-02, Krichette PK120, and Romeo 8T all have unacceptable housing because it is too large or difficult to look at. The SRS-02 has a nice crisp dot. The Krichette actually feels pretty nice as it is not very floaty, but it is quite large and difficult to look at. The PK120 has nicer housing but a more floaty reticle, which I don't like. And the Romeo 8T, I just can't stand the way it looks. I don't like the reticle. I don't like pretty much anything about it, but it is overall decent. The target ring is shotgun only, and it's mounted further away from your character, but overall it is pretty clean and it is a nice budget option. The Comp M4 and the Pro are both unacceptable to me because the housing is too large. However, the Comp M4 is nicer to shoot and use. The Pro is worse, and I don't like the lens caps. The EKP S103, I actually wanted to like this. As soon as I saw this, I thought it would be a replacement for the other EKP 8. However, after using it in many early wipe raids and now testing it, I can see why I lost a lot of early wipe fights. Because under tap fire, the reticle will get lower and lower, making it harder to see your target. I wanted to like this sight, but the more I used it, the more I don't like it. The Holosun HS40 1G5. This has a built-in laser that does not give you the point fire debuff, so that's cool, but kind of useless. The housing on it is too large, and I am not the biggest fan of it. The UTG, I actually kind of like this because you can turn the reticle from red to green. However, this is not a good sight, and I would not recommend. P1X42. These are extremely floaty, but they are relatively clean. If they were not so floaty, I would rank them higher, but they're very frustrating to use. The HHS-1, both in black and tan. These should be my favorite sights in the game because I think the EOTech is the best 1X and the 3X zoom I think is ideal for most situations. However, because the 1X EOTech is mounted more forward, it is more floaty. And also the 3X is not very good under the effect of recoil. It's kind of difficult to stay on target. So I do not recommend these, and I rank them quite poorly. The Obzor, it's not very good, but it's also not as terrible as it seems. The reticle is green, and that's kind of fun. The RV for the G36, the housing blocks the vast majority of your vision, and the part where you can see is very small. It is not good. The M2A1, this is only for the grenade launcher, and I think the housing is too large and the reticle is also too large. If I were to use the grenade launcher, I would use a different sight on it. The OKP7, the rail-mounted version. The reticle looks like a nipple. That's why people refer to this as the nipple sight. If you put this on your gun, it is now cursed, which is bad, and we don't like that. So be gone with this. Romeo 7. I am actually surprised at how terrible this sight is. I tried it and I thought it would be okay. It is literally terrible. It is floaty, it is bad. I cannot believe how bad this sight is. PKAA. It takes up the vast majority of your screen and what you can see is very, very small, so this is terrible and not good in any way. So to sum up Collimators, the EOTech XPS3-0 is still the best in the category, with the HCO and UH1 being alternatives for variety. The Cobra EKP-8 in form of the rail mount and the dove mount are still the budget heroes of the category. Assault scopes. A lot of these have been greatly improved after the recoil rework. The Bravo 4 is the best and also my favorite. In the 4X, it gives you the largest field of view and suffers minimally from scope shade. The Hammer is very similar, but it has more scope shade and it is slightly worse both in 1X and 4X. The Valde is back as your cheapest 1X to 6X. The Valde PS320 is reasonable to use again. It is not the greatest because it suffers quite a bit from scope shade, but overall it's pretty decent now, and I would say it is usable again. The Spectre DR in the black finish from Peacekeeper is your cheapest 1X to 4X scope. That's why it is always sold out on Peacekeeper. Now after the recoil rework, it is pretty good. It is usable. It does feel better to use now than it did in previous wipes. And to be clear, the black version and the brown version are both the same sight. However, the black version is cheaper from Peacekeeper. That's why it's always sold out. The Compact 2X32. This is a nice, crisp, clean little sight. Now that the recoil has been reduced, it's easier to stay on target. It's pretty good now, and I can see why people use it as their main sight. Prism 2.5X. This is still probably one of the most underrated sights in the game. I think people really hate it because of the reticle and because of the lens caps on the top. But overall, this sight is actually a lot better than it seems, and it's a very good budget option. Trihawk 3X30. This is also a really good budget sight. This is good for like bolt action builds and stuff like that, where you want to bring a sight that has a certain amount of zoom to it, but you don't really want to spend too much money on the sight. This is a good option. The ACOG TA01NSW in both black and tan. I don't like either of these. I think the housing is too big, and I don't like the way the reticle looks. It's a reasonable 4X, but I don't like it and I wouldn't recommend it. The ACOG TA11D. This is a confusing one because this is a triangle where you do need to aim at the tip of the triangle if things are further away, but a little bit lower and more to the center if they're close. This ACOG is, I don't know, it's okay, but like I just wouldn't use it. The AUGS STG77 1.5X and the A3M1 1.5X. These are honestly not that terrible. I ran into a couple of higher level players like 54, 58, and they were using these on their ACOGs, and I thought, that's really weird that they didn't swap them out for something else. So during my testing, I took a look at these and I was like, you know what? They're actually not that bad. I still would probably replace them, but I can see why people would say like, nah, it's fine, I'll keep it. I do like the 1.5x zoom. That is actually pretty nice. They're decent. They're not bad. Speaking of bad though, for the G36, the HKV 1.5x and the HKV 3x, both of these are horrible. The housing takes up your whole entire screen, and what you can actually see is very small. I would not use either of these. So in summary of the assault scopes, the Bravo 4 is the best in the category, with the Hammer coming in second. The Valde PS320 is back, baby! After the recoil rework, it is usable again, and it is the cheapest 1x to 6x that you can get. Please note that the 6x zoom is not as zoomed in as other 6x's in the game, like the Voodoo, the Razor, etc. The Spectre DR is your cheapest 1 to 4x, and it actually feels pretty decent nowadays. So that does it for the assault scopes. Optics. This is the most used category in the game, and there are some really great choices in here, so picking a favorite is actually really hard. If I had to pick a favorite, I guess I would go with the Razor HD Gen 2, but here's the thing. The Razor, the Tango, and the Voodoo, they're all extremely good 1 to 6x optics. Like, they're all extremely good. You can't go wrong with picking any of them. I've heard some complaints about the Tango, but for me personally, I am a big fan of it. I like it a lot, and it's new to this wipe. The Schmidt & Bender 1 to 8 is also extremely good, but it gives you that little bit of extra zoom on the 8x. Some people like that, some people don't. I find it quite nice. The TAC 30 with the 1x to 4x is still pretty decent. However, it does suffer a bit from scope shade, but overall it's pretty good still. The Schmidt & Bender 3x to 12x, this is not usable in most situations, but I have used it on maps like Lighthouse. It's actually pretty decent. I wouldn't say it's a bad scope, I would say it's okay. Probably good for shoreline, woods, lighthouse. I don't think I would take it to like customs or reserve, but it's okay. The PSO1, 1M2, 1M2-1, these are all really good budget options if you have a weapon that has a dove mount on them. All three of these have a 4x zoom, so they're quite limiting in close range combat. Personally, my favorite is the 1M2-1 because the little chevron in the middle is larger, and I think that makes it easier and more friendly to use. The 1P78-1 is also a dove-mounted sight. At first glance, it seems pretty horrible, but it's really not that bad. You're forced to use this for one of the test drive quests. The Schmidt & Bender 5x by 25x. I can't recommend this scope because the 5x is too zoomed in and the 25x is not zoomed in enough. Granted, if it was a real 25x zoom in, it probably wouldn't be usable. However, if you compare it to the Schmidt & Bender 3 to 12x, the 3x is better for scanning, and the 12x is more zoomed in than the 25x. So if you're comparing these two scopes for long distance duties, the Schmidt & Bender 3x to 12x is both better for scanning and better for when you're ready to take the shot. The FF 4 to 16, this one it's a little bit harder to look at in terms of the reticle, but it's a little bit more usable. I've used this on Lighthouse also to shoot rogues. In general, though, not my favorite sight. It is kind of fun, but it's not very versatile. You're kind of stuck to a 4x or a 16x, which the 4x can be okay, but again, the reticle's kind of ugly to look at. The PU 3.5x. This is not the greatest sight in the world, but it is a great budget option. You can use this on the Mosin and the SVT. It is decent, it is cheap, that's about it. Voms Palade. Usable, but not the best. It's kind of a cheap scope alternative. It's probably your cheapest rail optic. I don't think it's that great though, and the lens caps are kind of annoying. The P159 and the P169, nice. These are both pretty bad because they have 4 settings. They have a 3x in black, 3x in red, 10x in black, 10x in red. So if you want to go from 3x to 10x, you have to click 3 times either direction, and that makes them really frustrating and annoying to use. My general suggestion with these is we already have 2 of them, right? The P159 and the P169. Make it so the P159 is the black reticle, and make it so the P169 is the red reticle. I think that would solve this problem. It's not like this is the greatest sight in the game that everyone is using, but maybe that would make it more usable for people because right now it's just kind of frustrating to use. The ADO P4, I really don't like this thing. I think the housing is too large, what you see is too small, the reticle is too large. I don't like the way it zooms in. The reflex sight on the top I don't think is usable because it's way too floaty for my liking. Everything about this sight, I just don't like it. I never see people use it, so I'm guessing the vast majority of the community doesn't like it as well. The USP-1. This is kind of an ugly sight that takes up a lot of your screen, and the reticle hangs from the top, which is a little bit weird. It's not good, but it's not really that terrible either. The Leopold Mark IV, completely unusable. March Tactical, completely unusable. Night Force ATACR, completely unusable. So, to sum up optics, if you're looking for a really good 6x, the Razer HD Gen 2, the Tango, the Voodoo, these are the best for 6x. They feel great, they look great. If you want more distance, the Schmidt & Bender 1 to 8 is a really good one, and I'm quite a fan of it. If you want less distance, the TAC-30 is an excellent 1 to 4x, but it does suffer a little bit from scope shade. As far as budget alternatives, the PSO-1, 12M, 12M-1, and the PU 3.5x, which is only good on a Mosin and an SVT, are probably your go-to sights. As well as the Palade 4X32 as a good budget option for mounting on a rail. Special sights. Let's start with the thermals. The Reaper IR is amazing. It is extremely good. I remember back when you had to use one of these for Test Drive Part 1, that was the most stressful quest in the entire game for me personally. But it was always awesome to use a Reaper IR, always had your fingers crossed that you wouldn't die to a cheater, but when you actually got to use it and take advantage of the sight, it is incredible. The FLIR RS32, this has a lower refresh rate, so you have to be mindful of that when shooting. That means if you're shooting at a target that's sprinting, where they are on your scope is not where they are in person. In person, they are ahead of you because it's a low refresh rate. But overall, the FLIR's advantage is it's better at range. So if you're shooting at targets that are stationary, the FLIR will actually probably be better than the Reaper IR. But that is the trade-off of it. The Echo 1 is a reflex-like thermal with a 1x and 2x capability. The sight picture through it is very clear, it is nice, it is strong, it is easy to use, but it is quite expensive. The T12W reflex suffers greatly in sight picture. It's kind of difficult to tell what you're looking at. It's like if you see someone, it'll be a slight red dot in a whole field of blue. So the T12W, it's okay for spotting people in bushes and stuff, but I wouldn't use it as a primary sight. The MP155 Ultima thermal camera, I think this is pretty useless. It can be nice if you spot someone in a bush or something like that, but first of all, the way you view the camera is not very good because it's like laying flat in front of you, so it's kind of hard to tell what you're looking at. Secondly, it can only be mounted to the MP155, and you cannot use that shotgun for quests like setup. So it'd only really be helpful in like Silent Caliber. And at that point, it's like, cool, I can see somebody with a shotgun. Like, that's not the most useful application of a thermal. So this to me, I don't think it's very useful, but it is kind of cool. Moving on to the special sights for night vision. It's hard to recommend either of these because they conflict with the night vision on your helmet and it gets really bright. So you'd have to turn night vision on your helmet off in order to look through the sight, or don't bring night vision at all on your helmet and then use the sight. The Vulcan MG 3.5X is the nicer night vision sight out of the two. It mounts onto a rail and it gives you a larger area where you can see, and the vision through it is more clear. The NSPU-M, it has a little bit of a fishbowl effect, which I find disorienting, and the area that you can see is a lot smaller when compared to the Vulcan. But neither of these, I think, would be an ideal night vision setup. So to summarize special sights, the Reaper IR is ridiculously incredible, the FLIR is better for longer ranges, and the Echo is a reflex thermal for 1 to 2x work. In terms of night vision, it's hard to recommend either of them, but the Vulcan would be the better of the two. Alrighty, so that covers all the sights in the game and a little bit of what I think about them. In general, I think the Delta Point, the EOTech, the Bravo, the Voodoo, Tango, Razor are all the best in the game, and that's what I would recommend using. I hope you guys are having an awesome wipe. Have a good one, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.